Hey everybody, this is Mike with the One Stop Co-op Shop, and today I'm doing one that has been a glaring gap in my gaming knowledge. I have finally finished Pandemic Legacy Season 1, playing with my 13-year-old, and I'm going to do a review. And no disclaimer for this one, I bought the game myself for my son's Christmas present. And if you like the One Stop Co-op Shop, consider supporting us through Patreon. You get early access to our videos and exclusive videos every month you can't see anywhere else. You can also listen to our weekly podcast for reviews and design discussions, or join the conversation and say hi on our Discord. So this review is going to be in two parts, and I'm actually going to try to do this for Season 2 and Season 0 as well, as long as I can keep my 13-year-old interested. The first part is going to be completely spoiler-free besides what you see at the very beginning of the game when you first open up the stuff. But I'll keep my discussion vague. And then at the end of this video, I'm going to have kind of a breakdown and after-action report on how the campaign went, which characters we used, getting into full spoilers for that. So I'll give a big note before that section starts if you haven't played the game and want to avoid it. So the first big thing to know about Pandemic Legacy Season 1 is that it is still very much Pandemic. You're going to play a minimum of 12 games of Pandemic. For us, it took 15 games. We lost 3 times. But you're moving around basically the same board as always. You are curing diseases. What you can kind of see, though, is that things are going to change in different ways as the game goes along. And there is a bit of a story to follow. There are ways to upgrade and make the world worse. And there are different objectives, especially later in the game, although early on you are basically just playing Pandemic. And it has all the flaws of Pandemic, where the game is much harder at higher player counts and easier at lower player counts. The game does sort of balance for that, in that when you lose, things get easier, and when you win, things get harder. But it does mean that at higher player counts, you're probably going to play more games than we did. I would guess maybe closer to 17 or 18, because you'll probably lose more often. But yeah, if you don't like Pandemic, you probably won't like this one, because it is still very much that same game system. But as I mentioned, the big change in this system, besides just kind of the story element, is that you're getting these upgrades. This is my finish sheet, but again, you see this at the beginning of the game. You can upgrade your characters and give them special additional powers. You can add starting research stations to the board. You can put stickers on player cards to give them extra powers and things. But also, as things go poorly, cities will get worse and worse. You'll add these cities that make them harder to travel into, add these stickers, and just kind of mess them up. Also, your characters can get these scars that hurt them permanently, and eventually they are gone if you get too many. So just overall, there are a lot of changes, and you tend to get some negative stuff in the world getting more messed up as you go along, but also some positive stuff because you get 2 upgrade choices every game. So it gives that excitement of unlocking stuff, and there are a lot more upgrades beyond this, and also negative things that can happen that get unlocked as the game goes along. You're opening up boxes, you're scratching off cards. By the way, huge complaint about that, at least in my copy, the scratching off, it didn't work very well, and either the stuff would not come off, because you're sometimes scratching like the entire surface of a card with like that little metallic stuff finish that's on there. But then sometimes we would scratch too hard and the words would be illegible underneath. Yeah, it was very frustrating at times. Moving on to the story, this was generally a full pro for us. We had a great time with it. I knew some of the big events. I won't spoil anything, but some of the big things that happened early on, just from talking to my friends over the years. But my son knew nothing, and he was very excited by it. Most of the stories are told by these mission briefings you get each month, and then also some in-between briefings that you might scratch off and things. And, it's a little slow. There's not a big development every month, every play, but something pretty major happens, I would say, like every 3 to 4 plays, and you get maybe 3 huge revelations or 4 huge revelations throughout the game. So it's not like a heavy narrative game. You are obviously not reading a ton, but there are some really cool things to discover in the story, and it's definitely one of the best selling points of this overall experience, especially the first time you play through it, because I will say it is pretty much completely linear. There are some either-or situations you can get into, but the game, just to kind of keep things working correctly, does sort of rubber band you back to where you're supposed to be, even if things go terribly. So it's definitely not going to be as good the second time you play through it, but still, the story, really a big selling point here, definitely a lot of fun. As for the characters, they have several from the base Pandemic game. You can see 2 of them here, but you do branch out quite a bit from there. Some of the unlocks are more characters who have cool powers. Now, this didn't work too well for us in 2-player because we upgraded some characters with very powerful abilities, and then we were basically able to use those characters for the entire campaign. So unlocking these new characters, woohoo, barely mattered at all because they were so much weaker than our upgraded characters. Now, there is a potential for characters to be defeated. Sometimes you need specific characters to help you with specific objectives, so you're not always going to fall into that trap. And I do think that's primarily a lower player count thing. I think with 3 or 4 players where you need to branch out and spread out the number of characters, and maybe more if you are getting scars and being defeated because you're just sitting on the board for a while waiting for your turn to come around, then I think more characters would get used. But definitely the variety of characters was a bit of a waste just because we didn't need to explore most of them. But that being said, it is still really cool to upgrade your characters. Again, you can see they can get scars and upgrades and relationships. What are those? I won't say because I guess that's a bit of a spoiler, but they are there on the card, so you know something's going to happen. So it does branch out beyond just the basics of what base Pandemic characters let you do, and you can find some really cool combos. Although I will say another caveat, I think some abilities you can upgrade into are just so stupidly amazing, and this has been my experience in Season 0 and Season 2 as well. And other abilities are like so niche or so hard to actually utilize consistently. It's not a good balance. So we grabbed the best character upgrades possible, kind of the obvious ones, and then didn't touch other ones, and it made the game a lot easier. So again, I think it'll be more interesting with more players because then there's not as many upgrades to go around, and one character having like the best upgrades is not going to matter as much. Just something to be aware of going in. You also, as I noted, can put upgrades on player cards so that they sort of become events and player cards for curing diseases. I'm not going to go too deep into this one or show any of them because that will be spoilery, but it is pretty cool. The big caveats are when you upgrade a player card, it might be at the bottom of the deck, so it's pretty swingy whether these new powers will come out or not. And then a bigger negative is that I guess if you sleeve the cards and then like unsleeve them to put stickers on them and then re-sleeve them, this won't be a problem. But we did not do that, and trying to riffle shuffle cards that have big fat extra thickness adding stickers on the middle of them does not work very well. We would sometimes shuffle and like rip off stickers and have to try to reapply them. So just a minor annoyance. And again, if you're going to sleeve your cards and just kind of put the stickers inside, then it won't be a problem. But overall, the way your characters level up, the way the board changes, as I showed you earlier, the way that the player cards can change, are all pretty cool and definitely give the game some nice variety. Although, again, I'm not sure how much variety there would be campaign to campaign because some options are so much better than others. Now, let's talk briefly about the balance of the game. The main balancing element is that whenever you lose a month, you get a second chance to try it. So technically, you could play the game up to 24 times to finish the campaign if you keep on losing the first month. And each time you lose, your funding goes up by 2, which means you'll get more of these events from the base Pandemic game, these positive cards you can play off and out of turn, shuffle into the deck, which makes the deck bigger. You're not going to get epidemics as quickly. That's all to the good. And then every time you win, you reduce your funding by 2. So at least in a 2-player game that we were playing, our funding was pretty much 0 for the entire game. So we basically had 0 events because 2 players easier and we tended to win the entire time. But I think it kind of works. I mean, the thing that this system of balancing is not paying attention to is how terribly your board might be getting affected. Because in a really bad game, you can have tons of cities get these negative stickers applied to them. And nothing in the game's really going to pay attention to that. I mean, not that it could, obviously. I don't know how the design would account for that. But yeah, so if you're playing like a really high player count and things are going poorly and you are losing repeatedly and the world is getting burned to a crisp, your play sessions might be a little bit frustrating because those city stickers mainly make it very difficult to move around and such. Although I will note the game has a box if you lose 4 times in a row that gives you a very powerful way to deal with that stuff. No spoilers about that. So if your game is going terribly or you just don't know how to Pandemic very well, the game does sort of have you covered. Another thing to mention for the balance is the swinginess. Pandemic has always been an inherently swingy system with which city cards come out, which things get infected. It is greatly exacerbated, I would say, in Legacy Season 1. I won't go into specifics as to why, but basically, if you draw some cities as opposed to other cities, it's so much worse. So much worse. So the games where we drew a lot of those cities, the bad ones, were incredibly tough, and games where we didn't draw a lot of them were sometimes wrapped up in 10 seconds. Of course, you also have the luck of when player cards come out and the combos of player cards for curing diseases, and that gets exacerbated as well because you can actually upgrade the diseases with positive mutations. You see, we did most of them in our game. But yeah, it's a very swingy system. Over the course of many games, it tends to balance out, but you will have some like weirdly frustrating games and weirdly quick games. And the frustration doesn't stop there. I'm not going to spoil much, but in later missions, there are some things that you need need to do to accomplish certain things. And those can be very swingy as well. You can be, after multiple turns, about to resolve something, and then a negative, unlucky draw pushes things back completely. So yeah, just know going in that it is even more swingy and more frustrating than base Pandemic, for better or worse. Another note, this is a legacy game, and as such, they are adding, like many legacy games do, rulebook notes to the rulebook. I'm showing a page that doesn't have any, since these would all be spoilers. So you have new rulebook stuff to keep track of as you go. Not a big deal if you're playing pretty often. So like for me and my son, we finished in under a month. So it didn't take very long and we didn't have to keep track of rules. But even then, we still lost track of stuff because they sometimes, this is a little bit frustrating and for me, they sometimes put a rule that applies to one part of the turn in like a different section. So it's not logical and obvious how that rule applies to the previous part. Again, if you're playing pretty regularly, you're going to remember it and not a big deal. But if you haven't played for a few months, like the group that's getting together to play it is not getting together frequently, and you're looking through the rulebook to try to remind yourself of all the new rules that have been added beyond base Pandemic stuff, it can be a little bit annoying, or even just to look up stuff, because again, just in rare cases, this is not too frequent, but in rare cases, something that really applies to one part of the rulebook will be like over in this other part of the rulebook, and why, I don't know. And of course, the game also has the whole ripping things up thing. Hey, I'm just ripping something up because whatever, we won. So if you hate that, it's Legacy, you're still not going to like that. So I think those are like my main non-spoiler takeaways. We loved the game. It was a great time. We played it 15 times and had a really good time. But I just have to point out the swinginess, the frustrating elements, but also the great stuff, the story, the surprise, the growth, the dynamic nature of the game. All of that is awesome. All right, so that is my non-spoiler review section for Pandemic Legacy Season 1. Again, I might do Season 2 and Season 0 if my son keeps playing with me. Those ones, Pandemic Legacy Season 1, I'd never beaten before. I'd only played a few months here and there. But Season 2, I beat the entire thing, and Season 0, I've beaten almost the entire thing. So I have more experience with those, but we'll see how it is with my son. But yeah, stick around if you want to hear the spoiler section of the game. I'm going to talk through our actual campaign. So go away if you don't want to hear that. All right, Pandemic Season 1 veterans. Here's a look at almost the entire map. It's hard to fit it all on screen. So, as you can probably tell, red was our coda color. So we were over there scrambling to deal with stuff. We did have the best endings. We did vaccinate all of the red areas. We didn't blow up every military base, but we blew up a lot of them. And we did get rid of the stockpile in Atlanta. And yeah, you can see, so we started our first game on January 2nd. That was actually after several learning games because my son had never played a Pandemic game before. We lost our first game in March. We lost our first game in May. And we did have to take 2 games in December to win. What we did is we actually vaccinated everything in the early December and ignored trying to get the stockpile, which made sense to me with just 2 of us. And then we had the stupidest, most easy win in late December because we just sat in Atlanta basically and solved things very quickly. But it took us, about 24 days. So like just over 3 weeks to beat everything. Not a bad pace, I think. And our score was the highest possible by I think it was an 802, and I think 801 is the highest score threshold. Although I guarantee that I cheated a few times, like when we were doing searches for things, on those little search bars, and my son was about to succeed at it, and then something bad would happen that would push it back or something. I would just sort of flub the card draw. Shh, don't tell anybody. So we probably would have, I would guess, if I was playing 100% on board with the rules, I bet we would have been one victory level lower than we actually got, maybe more in the 600s or 700s. But yeah, you can see that Europe was largely untouched. The US got a little bad, New York and Montreal. Africa was fantastic, very pristine. A lot of Asia was looking good. Tons of bad cities in the Pacific Rim and East Asia, as you might imagine, with Coda being there, although Jakarta stayed okay. And any more Taipei, where we had built our only research station in Pacific Rim, that one stayed okay. And South America was also pretty bad. That was like from 2 games. We had just like tons of outbreaks in like Sao Paulo and Santiago, and they were kind of spreading to each other. Yeah, that was pretty rough. We did do all of the positive mutations. We actually got them pretty early because we were doing scientist and medic, or whatever they're called in this one. I'll show you them in a second. But yeah, so we got yellow and black to where you can cure them with only 4 cards and no action and no research station, and blue to the other end since they don't have a third one of those -1 card upgrades. We never went for the last mutation where it's like you all count as the medic for getting rid of the cubes. That didn't ever really seem necessary with the characters we were playing. But yeah, and this was definitely silly in a lot of games because I was the scientist and several games, I drew 3 black cards or 3 yellow cards to start and just cured a disease on my first turn. Like, whatever. That's just how this game goes sometimes. In terms of our characters, we used 6. No, we didn't use 6. One extra guy we weren't using died, but we used 5. So the main ones we used for the entire game were the medic. This is my son's main one. Here, I'll freeze on that. So yeah, we used the co-workers one right away because holy crap, in 2-player co-workers is insane. Just insane. Being able to share city cards with one of us being there was ridiculous. It made curing the diseases so much quicker. And then yeah, medic with local connections. Give me a break. Like, such a ridiculous combo. And then Formidable was actually a later one for this guy, Johnson Carpenter, because that was when what were we using that for? I think we were actually trying to build military bases. It's before the turn where we get revealed that they're negative. And yeah, he only got 1 scar, not too bad. That was my son's main one, whereas I was the scientist for most of the game, although I switched up a little bit more. So yeah, I was a coworker with the medic. I had pilot, which was ridiculous. Again, like the sub abilities are so much better than others. And I got local pressure. I really only used that like once or twice. I got that kind of late game again before the turn and like the vaccine and all of that. And 1 scar for her. And then Winston over here. Winston Hard Oil. Yeah, I made dumb names for my characters. This is the guy I played the most besides Madeline, besides the scientist. I think I probably played him in like 4 or 5 sessions. He was, again, a co-worker with the medic because my son played the medic in every game except I think 1. And you might notice he has the paramilitary escort, so you think that he's probably the traitor, right? He's also the only military character we used the entire playthrough. But no, because literally right before the traitor was revealed to exist, he died. I was playing it too hard and loose in the Coda area, trying to do roadblocks and stuff. And I was not putting hazmat suits in my hand or any of the things that can prevent scars from starting with Faded. And, a red draw, put a Faded in my city. And yep, I got my last scar and died. But it was hilarious when the the traitor was revealed and literally none of us were eligible. Nobody, he had the paramilitary escort. Nobody else was military that we had ever used. So this random soldier got killed that never even existed in the game. So that was sort of hilarious. But it would have been Winston 100% if he had survived. God, by the way, if I ever played through the campaign again, like if you're just kind of being cheap and knowing what's coming, paramilitary escort is such a ridiculous ability. If you just wait until after the traitor's revealed and then put it on somebody, which I think you can do. I don't think it gets rid of the sticker because what a great, they know you're going to use it. That's why they made the traitor work the way it does. But yeah, so those were all of our main characters. The only ones we splashed in, I think this was literally just for December. Yeah, just for December, both plays. So I played the immunologist. I got multiple identities, but I got it late. That's actually a good one. I should have gotten that earlier, but we didn't have any room on our main characters. But yeah, so the immunologist I got for December just to vaccinate the entire world made it a lot easier. And especially with some C4 to blow up the military bases, because Asia and Pacific Rim had a bunch of military bases, as you can imagine. And then Harrison named the generalist Hannah. This is, by the way, the character that he used for all of our practice games, 2 or 3 of those. So I guess he did play her 4 or 5 times. And yeah, he increased his hand limit by 1, thinking he might need more cards for the final stockpile destruction. It didn't end up being the case. It was nothing. Yeah, so that's pretty much, I don't think there's anything else really interesting to show. Those who have played, you can probably kind of imagine how the game went. We did pretty much always get the search the very first time we played it. And we didn't use binoculars, the equipment that helps you get through the search faster, until the final stockpiles. We still had those ready to go and like able to be added freely to a card, so they weren't already in the deck waiting for a lucky draw. But yeah, the world ended up pretty good. I did tell my son that is not what the world will look like if we play season 2. For anybody who's played even the beginning of that one or seen what the theme is for that one, definitely our game is not canon in the Pandemic Legacy world. But yeah, we had a good time. I do think if I'd played it with more than 2 players, it would have been certainly a tenser and more interesting experience. So the powers we used were kind of obvious here, but didn't mean it wasn't fun. So that's it. Thanks for watching Experience Pandemic-ers. And again, hopefully, if my son wants, we'll play Season 2 next, I think will make sense, and then go back to Season 0. We'll do them in order of release. But thanks for watching, and a special thank you, if you're still here. I just realized I'm doing Patreon thanks for a section of the video that some people might never see. But special thanks to J. William F., Steve Wren, Miles, KCW, Andrew R., and Chris C. We'll see you at the next stop.